with quite a scary list of conditions that, if not caused by being overweight in cats, are certainly made worse by it. Actually, how lovely as a cat owner to have something that's in your gift to give your cat, which is to put them at an ideal weight that will minimise these risks for them. So it's actually really nice that this is something that's hugely in our control that we can do to help our cat.
Welcome to the Call the Vet Show, the podcast that helps pet parents understand and optimize the health of their furry family so they can live the full and happy life you want for them. And here's your host, veterinarian Dr. Alex Avery.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Call the Vet Show. I'm veterinarian Dr. Alex, and today we're sticking with the theme of Pet Obesity Awareness Month, which is going on all this month, by talking about cat weight loss. So last week we heard from Kelly and Edie the pug about Edie's weight loss journey from being really incredibly heavy to getting down to a much healthier ideal weight, which she has managed to maintain. And a lot of those fantastic tips that Kelly shared from her experience of weight loss apply to our cats. But there are some peculiarities for cats. They're always going to be a little bit different than dogs. And there are some things that we really need to be careful of, especially with the speed of weight loss, because if your cat really is super heavy and they lose weight too quickly, it could be life-threatening. And this episode is also an interview, but it's one with a slight difference in that I'm actually being interviewed by Laylee and Kevin from Superkit. So I went over onto their Instagram channel for a live cat chat where we spoke all about the importance of weight loss in cats and how to go about it. And I thought Laylee and Kevin asked such great questions that I really wanted to include this information, and they were kind enough to let me share this audio with you. So bear that in mind. This is audio from a live Instagram, so it's not quite as good quality as normal for the podcast, but it's perfectly audible and it contains some really hugely important information that I'm delighted to be sharing with you. So without further ado, let's jump into the episode.
And now, on with the show.
It's so nice to have a really trusted resource when it comes to those kind of tricky questions we all wrestle with as pet owners and cat owners, like not least of which is our cat's weight, which is what we're here to talk about today. So I suppose we should start at the beginning in terms of your experience as a vet. Why do vets care about our cat's health, and in turn, why should we? So what are the health risks and benefits of being over, under, or healthy weight?
Yeah, overweight. So if we go back into the dim and distant past, we used to think that being, carrying a little bit too much fat wasn't a problem. You're chunky but healthy. Fat, it just sits there doing nothing. But that couldn't really be further from the truth. So fat is incredibly active tissue, and it's also massively pro-inflammatory. So it releases all of these chemicals into the body. Most of them cause inflammation, and it affects the whole body. It's not just like it's targeted. It's just not just affecting under the skin, for example. It's affecting the whole body. It's basically involved in pretty much every disease. And I kind of joke whenever I talk to people over on my podcast, it always ends up being going back to weight. It's just so important. So we know that overweight individuals, cats specifically, it's something like a 3 or maybe a 5 times greater risk of diabetes. They're going to get arthritis. I mean, that's pretty much a given for a cat anyway, unfortunately. And that's another topic we could talk about another time. They're going to get it so much earlier. And cats being cats, they're going to hide the fact that they're in pain. We're maybe not going to realize it. And so they're going to be living in unrecognized pain for a significant proportion of their life, potentially. It causes skin disease. It causes urinary tract disease, kidney problems, liver disease, you name it, it causes it, or it maybe not causes it. That might be a little bit too strong in some cases, but it certainly contributes to that. And so if we can keep our cats a healthy weight, then we might not be able to prevent all these things, but we can go a long way to making sure that they are not suffering from those conditions. And I guess the other thing that's worth mentioning, or it's a big problem, is that people might be watching this and go, well, my cat's a healthy weight, I don't need to worry. And if they are, then fantastic, but it really pays to be proactive to keep them that way. But we know across the world between 60, 70, even 75% of cats are overweight.
Used to cats being bigger than they should be is the benchmark for what we think the normal weight for a cat is. is larger than it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think our perception of normal has been completely skewed. We get used to seeing these cats that are overweight. So we think that's how a cat should look. But our perception is skewed effectively. So kind of one of the biggest weight problems that I get asked about with owners proactively coming and seeing me in the vet clinic is, I'm a bit worried my cat's underweight, when actually a lot of the time they're completely normal. And I'm talking here about maybe a healthy adult, kind of middle-aged young adult cat. For older cats, certainly being underweight is a problem. But for our otherwise healthy cat, they go, I'm a bit worried they're a bit underweight. Maybe they're not eating very much. I'm really worried about that. Are they a good weight? And you're looking at this cat that's overweight or even morbidly obese and thinking they are eating plenty. Absolutely, Kevin. It's our perception just gets skewed, and that's no fault of our own. And that touches on the great point I was going to make, and you've preempted that, which is fantastic, which is that actually that we're not people aren't recognizing that. So if there are 10 owners with cats who are overweight, 8 of them will feel that their cat is a healthy weight.
Do we weigh our cats, or is there things we can look for in their appearance that are kind of those red flags?
Because that is it, isn't it? We don't weigh our cats. We've never really weighed a cats at home. We weigh them at the vets, or they are weighed by the vet when we go there and we're given a figure and we have that figure. But we don't weigh them in between visits, and we look at them. We judge it by sight.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are some great things we can do. I mean, we can weigh our cats at home. Our cats aren't Labradors, so we normally have scales that are able to weigh them. So it might take a little bit of a Heath Robinson MacGyver approach to work out how you can adapt your cat. You're balancing them in the little mixing bowl or something. But you can keep a good track of your cat's weight. That can be as simple as how you pop them in their carry cage or on their bed where they're happy to sit. The weight of their carry cage or their bed, and then you subtract the two. And doing that regularly is fantastic. Having that baseline level and having that discussion with your vet next time you go in, honestly saying, is my cat, what weight should my cat be if they were their 100% ideal weight? I'll have this discussion and I'll say, your cat's a little bit too heavy, and I can see the kind of the shutters coming up saying, no, that's not a problem. I'm not worried about it. If people aren't recognizing it as a problem, then there's no point in then having the discussion about the weight, because I kind of jokingly say that actually accepting that there's a problem is 50% of the battle, and then the other 50% is losing the weight, which is maybe a little bit harder. But if you don't recognize it, then it's, you can't do anything about it. As far as kind of physical characteristics of a healthy and an overweight cat, so we do something called a body condition score. And one of a great resource is, if you're kind of jumping online, is the WSAVA body condition score. So that's the World Small Animal Veterinary Association. They have some great information about a whole load of things. Basically, for a healthy cat, we should be able to feel their ribs without really putting any pressure. There might be a little bit of a fat covering, but you should be able to feel their ribs really nicely. They should also, if you look at them from above, they should have a slight waist. So kind of a little bit of an hourglass. That's not as pronounced as in dogs. So in dogs, they should have a really nice kind of tuck from above, but cats, they should still have one. And then from the side, if you're looking at them from side on, they should have a little bit of a waist. It's not, again, as pronounced as a dog, but it should be there. They certainly shouldn't have a big fat pad dangling down. Now, as they get a bit heavier, you're going to stop being able to feel their ribs quite so well. You might still be able to feel them, but there's a bit of padding and you're struggling and is that one rib there, and a bit struggling to count them a little bit. Their waist will go, so they'll start to square up. And again, from the side, they'll kind of square. So they'll become kind of rectangles. And then as that develops, you'll get a marked belly. So you'll end up with a Garfield cat. But the big place that cats will put weight down that can sometimes be a little bit hidden is that fat pad between their back legs. And so it's between their back legs. So, it's maybe a little bit hidden. So yeah, if you kind of, ask your cat nicely before you do this, but, cop a feel and get your hand between their back legs. If you can get a handful of something, there's going to be a little bit of loose skin. That's normal. But if you can kind of get a handful of something and it's a bit squidgy, it's going to be fat. And that's going to be a sign that they're, potentially laying down too much and overweight. So, it's something that's pretty easy to do. Like I say, there's that resource. They've got some pretty good pictures and descriptions and things, but keeping a regular track of it so that that, my cat is currently 4.5 kilos. They're, 2 years old. My vet said they're healthy and that's their weight. Well, 4.5 kilos is how much they should weigh for the rest of their life, potentially. So, if they're starting to creep up, we know there's a problem.
I love knowing those kind of the early warning signs, because it means that, because you kind of have to, we don't wake up every morning and think, I really must put my cat in a mixing bowl and put them on the soil. Maybe we should, but we don't. And so it's really nice to go, actually, when I'm stroking my cat, I can't quite feel their ribs. That feels to me like it's time to take some action. And it's maybe a bit less confrontational than when it gets to a veterinary surgery situation where you feel, you bring a lot of emotion to the table and you kind of maybe.
Absolutely. We love our cats. They're part of the family. And one of the big ways that we manifest that kind of love for them is to feed them. We're feeders, and that's with treats, that with good food. It's the amount of food that we give, going, oh, that doesn't look very much. Oh, they're looking at me like they're hungry. I'm going to just top up their food bowl. Or, oh, I don't want them to get hungry while I'm out, so I'll just make sure that I've put just, like a lot down just so that they don't, So we're coming from a place of love, and it's not, but it seems like such a criticism, does it? If someone's, we can beat around the bush a lot, and certainly we'll try doing that to start with. We'll say, oh, they're a little bit heavy, they're carrying a little bit too much, weight. But ultimately, we've got to at some point hit home that this is a real serious problem, that we might, we have to use the F word. They are fat, or, they're obese, or, we've got to use some of these words, but they can be quite confrontational, and they seem, pretty critical as well. Yeah, I guess it's important to realize that we're not, your vet or your vet nurse or whatever is not criticizing. They're not trying to, shame you or anything like that. They are, they're coming from a place of trying to help and trying to solve this problem together, because ultimately we need to solve this together.
Yeah, and it's like you were saying at the opening, with quite a scary list of conditions that, if not caused by being overweight in cats, are certainly, made worse by it. Actually, how lovely as a cat owner to have something that's in your gift to give your cat, which is to put them at an ideal weight that will minimize these risks for them. So it's actually quite, there's lots of things that are out of our control as cat owners when it comes to their health. You don't know if they're going to get an infection, or inevitable that they'll get diabetes or things like that. So it's actually really nice that this is something that's hugely in our control that we can do to help our cats.
Yeah. I said it's 50% is recognizing it. The other 50% is quite a lot harder, isn't it? But I guess the good, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of things that can come along in life, and we either have no control over it, or we have to spend an awful lot of money to try and fix it. And it's really hard. With weight, it takes a lot of effort on our part, and it takes a lot of honesty, I guess, as well. But it doesn't take a lot of money. So it's something that is within everybody's reach. I mean, ideally, we get this message out, like doing chats like today, and we prevent the problem in the first place. But, the reality is, I mean, I know my cats have gone into the cattery for a couple of weeks while I've been on holiday, and they come back and they're a bit too heavy. Or, the kids have taken a real interest in feeding our cats for a little while, and they're fed too much. And so we have to, take action. So, yeah, the first thing is to recognize that there's a problem. The second step is to, I guess, recognize how big that problem is, because we need to be very mindful. We need to take particular care with our really overweight, our kind of morbidly obese cats when it comes to losing weight, because they have a particular risk which dogs don't have. So cats and dogs are a bit different here. So we do need to be really careful with our overweight cats, especially our cats that are really kind of overweight. So our obese kind of Garfield cats, because they can suffer from a condition called fatty liver or hepatic lipidosis if we try and let them lose weight too quickly. So the classic case here is a cat who's overweight, who gets shut in a shed over the weekend and is starved for a few days. But we can absolutely trigger this if we try and diet them too much, and we try and just go, no, you're just eating this food and I'm not going to give you anything else. I've been told off by my vet. I don't want you to get diabetes, and you're going to eat this new food. And the cat goes, I'm a cat, I'm going to do what I want to do, and no, I'm not going to eat it. And if they lose weight too quickly, what happens is the body, it kind of goes into a starvation state, and it tries to mobilize all this extra fat to produce energy. That processing of that fat takes place in the liver. But what happens is that they don't just process a little bit of fat, it all goes, they just go to town. The blood basically fills up with fat. The liver tries to cope with that, but it just gets completely overwhelmed and basically becomes just a big ball of fat that can't do its normal job. So they go into acute liver failure that is absolutely fatal without some pretty significant treatment. So that's not to scare people, but we just need to be a little bit careful about these really overweight cats especially. And so with that in mind, my recommendation for those cats, if you know your cat is in that category where they're really overweight, is actually to be talking to your veterinary team, because a lot of vet clinics will run weight loss programs. This is a great way that we involve our nurses. They're fantastic. We run free weight loss clinics in our practice. Now, it might not always be free, but often it's a token amount that's very much worth the money. And our vet nurses are fantastic at this. They will obviously track your cat's weight. They will help support you, because it's a long-term process as well. Like, we need to be realistic. For our really heavy cats, we're talking 6, 9, even 12 months. That's a real journey where it's easy to, start off, real enthusiasm, but that enthusiasm pretty quickly drops when we see the scales have hardly moved, or actually for the last couple of weeks, the weight's gone up, but I've been doing everything I've been told. What do I do? I'm just going to give up. Yeah. So that's where having that support is really important, as well as helping keep things a little bit safer too. But, we can absolutely do weight loss at home as well. So that's not to say that the only way to lose weight in your cat is to go and see your vet, because that's not true at all. We could kind of take a two-pronged approach, I guess. The most important one that is kind of our diet, what we're feeding our cat. So that's kind of category number one. Category number two is exercise, and maybe how we're feeding them as well. Like, if your cat is just a little bit overweight, you absolutely can just stick to your current diet, just reduce it a little bit, 10%, 15%, reweigh your cat like we've, discussed with your kind of MacGyver contraption at home. Keep a track of things. And if it's working, then fantastic. If that weight is coming off, then you just stick with that. You keep monitoring the weight. And then when they reach a healthy weight, it's likely that you could probably just increase that food a little bit. We think of like, well, I'm feeding the right amount for my cat. I'm going to double check. I'm going to look on the side of the packet to say, well, my cat is, if my cat's 5 kilos, right, it says I should be feeding 50 grams. So that's what I'm going to feed. But if your cat is actually a 4 kilo cat trapped in a 5 kilo cat's body, the amount that they should be fed on a daily basis is that 4 kilo amount. But if we do that, the extra fat, although it's really active, like we talked about, it doesn't take very much extra energy to maintain that fat. So we actually have to reduce it. So if we're working out the amount that we feed, I mean, that sounds really complicated. I'm not sure I've explained that very well. If we're trying to work out how much we should be feeding our cat for weight loss, we need to be thinking, what is their ideal weight? We then look and see on the pack how much we should be feeding for their ideal weight. Mm-hmm. And then we need to reduce that by about 10 to 15%.
Okay, that's cool. Right. And then once they've got to their ideal weight, we can put them back up that 10 to 15%.
We can put them back up. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Yeah. Yeah. And not actually.
Yeah. And then that's a starting point as well, because we all have different metabolic rates. Some of us look at a cake and gain weight. Others can go to town at McDonald's and they, never seem to gain weight. It's the same with your cat. So kind of for a lot of diseases, I kind of have a 3M mantra, which is modify. So we do something, we measure, so we see what happens, and then we maintain once it's working. And it's the same way. So it's a kind of a constant process. It's a dynamic process. And it might be that actually as your cat loses a little bit of weight, they become more active, weight loss accelerates, and we go, well, actually, maybe let's feed a little bit more, or we can start giving some, different treats, or, we can do different things. So, so that's really the main way that we can, work out how much to feed our cat. Now, for those cats that are just a little bit overweight, that works really well. And especially if we know that, well, they've been a healthy weight, but something's just happened. So, a baby's just come into the house and, I'm just making sure that they're fed, like I'm winning if they're fed, or they've gone to the cattery for 2 weeks and, they've gained weight because they've just comfort ate for 2 weeks. So that can work really well. If it's a longer term thing that we're not really, it's kind of crept up on us over the years, that weight's maybe a little bit more, then that's where we look at maybe changing their diet. So that can be a number of different ways. We can, there's a whole load of different things out there. Like in the first instance, there's lots of light versions of whatever you're feeding. So if you're happy with the brand that you're feeding, great. There's often a light version of that. And that just normally means that it's bulked out with a bit more fiber. So it kind of fills them up. It makes them feel fuller for longer, and it's less energy dense. So you can feed the same amount of food has got less calories in it effectively. And then we do the same process again. The light diets will often maybe have a little column in their amount to say, they'll have a picture of a thin cat and they'll have a picture of a fat cat. And, it helps you work it out a little bit maybe. Yeah. That's one thing that we can do. For those cats that are really overweight, because the other reality, unfortunately, is for cats that are, significantly overweight, the success of weight loss or of owners attempting weight loss is not very high. You know, it's like 20%, 30%. A lot of people, maybe 50%, there will be some weight loss, but we'll get that rebound. You know, it's like the classic, you go on a diet at New Year's, and then by March, you know, you're back to the same weight that you were before. And it's the same with our cats. So to be as successful as possible, that's where I certainly recommend our prescription diets. Yeah. Diet is a very polarizing topic on the internet.
Yes.
But yeah, so, you know, let's not get into any arguments, but
Yeah.
but I'm a strong believer, you know, these weight loss diets, they do a fantastic job. They're designed specifically for weight loss. They've got a lot of very clever things in them. So it's not just adding fiber to bulk them out. We've got things like L-carnitine, which helps to mobilize fat and burn fat while maintaining muscle mass. Because the other thing that we can get is if we're starving our animals, we're not starving them, but if we're, you know, trying to trigger that weight loss, they can actually start breaking down muscle as well to try and provide extra energy, which we absolutely don't want. We want them burning that fat and maintaining that muscle.
Yeah.
Something called L-carnitine can help with that. And there's lots of other clever things in there. Some diets even actually change the gene expression in the body.
Wow.
To change the metabolism of that individual to one that burns fat and maintains muscle.
So where's the human version? This all sounds fantastic.
Yeah, the human version is the Mediterranean diet, apparently. It's kind of like tomatoes and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So, you know, there's some really clever technology and research that has gone into these diets. And if your cat, you know, like I say, if you can do it with your diet that you're currently feeding, fantastic. If you can do it with just a light diet that you'd rather feed, that's the brand that you're comfortable with, then fantastic. But the reality is that, unfortunately, a lot of the times that isn't enough. And then, so we need these other diets.
Sorry, no, go on. I'll jump into another.
I was going to say for cats, so like high protein diets, low carbohydrate diets, you know, is our cat weight loss friendly diet as well. So for those of you who are, you know, home preparing food and all that kind of thing, or just want to, because unfortunately these prescription diets, they do cost more money as well, which in the grand scheme of things, if you do it on a per meal basis, it's not a huge amount, but it's going to be out of reach for some people. Unfortunately, that's the reality, you know. So if you're looking, you want to look for a diet that's, you know, really high in protein. It wants to be over 50%, low in carbohydrates, and maybe about 30% fats in the diet as well. That seems to be, you know, what cats need to lose weight.
That makes sense. I suppose from a owner perspective, obviously you're an owner as well, so you'll know probably what I'm about to say, but our cats are probably not going to take this lying down if we start feeding them less. So do we just kind of zone that out, or is there anything we can do to make our cats transition to a new diet easier?
So I think we need to, so I guess there's two things here. Like if we're just reducing the amount of the diet, if we're like do that gradually, just so that they get used to having that reduction in amount, I guess. The other thing that we should say is that we've spoken about how much to feed, weigh it out. Don't do it by cups. I hate cups, especially for our cats and our small dogs. It's the same, but the difference between a little kind of a heap on top of that cup, that marker is potentially huge. I mean, that's 10 to 20% of extra energy you could be giving.
Yeah, that's like the size of their skull, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
quite small amounts, aren't they? Yeah.
Exactly. So get those scales out, weigh them out. And that seems like a bit of a palaver, but if you do that once a week and you put it into 7 Ziploc bags, you know, that's Monday, Tuesday, you know, that's all their food sorted. It doesn't take very long. So that's, you know, that's huge. But I think doing any diet change in a cat, it needs to be slow. Now, there's a couple of schools of thought with how we can change diets in a cat, because you're right, like cats are, you know, they're their own creatures, they're their own individual, and they'll do what they want. We used to say, you know, just slowly reduce the amount of your old food and increase the amount of your new food, all mixed up in the same bowl. Do that over 2 weeks, even 4 weeks. You know, we're talking about a process that's going to take a long time. And so there's no rush. You know, it's not like we need to get them on this tomorrow or else they're going to die. It's not that at all. You know, we can afford to take our time. So it's being realistic there. A new school of thought, though, when it comes to changing your cat's diet is actually you get your current food bowl, the food bowl that you know your cat is happy to eat from, you know, that they love, and you actually use that for their new food.
Okay.
You then get a new bowl that's completely different. You know, maybe it's plastic or it's, you know, whatever, it's completely different. And you actually use that for their old food. And you still do this transition. So you reduce the amount of their old food and you increase the amount of their new food, but you do it in 2 separate bowls that are next to each other.
Cool. I like that.
Now, I have to say, I haven't personally tried that. My cats are great. The other thing that I do is I actually feed my cats a mixture of stuff so that they kind of know that what goes in that bowl is what they need to eat. And they're used to eating all of these different things because cats can become really focused on either one particular type of food. So they become, complete kibble junkies. And if you try and feed them a wet food, they're just not going to take it. Or they like the chunky, wet food. But if you try and feed them a mousse, they're not going to, they become really fixated. So giving them these different textures, different flavors, I think is really beneficial if we then need to, go and change their diet like this. I mean, if they stay healthy their whole life, then it doesn't really matter if they're fixated on one food. But
it's so much easier not having a picky eater anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's always difficult. But they do tend to become more concentrated. The more you give them of one thing, the more they want that. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it, with them? But yeah, I totally makes sense.
Yeah. And what about the other side of the equation, the exercise part? Because I hadn't given much thought to that.
I didn't actually think about that.
Yeah. I mean, we think of exercise as something that we can do with dogs. And I know I'm talking to the community that has harnesses and, it's all about getting your cats out, which is fantastic. But, so we can exercise our cats. We can exercise them in a number of different ways. So we can take them for, walks, for more exploring trips, and, all of that helps. It might be that you think, well, it's not like we're going running with our cat. I mean, I don't know how many of your community goes running with your cat. Probably not very many.
I guess there's some recycling, I don't know. But
yeah, I'm sure there's a couple out there. But, like when you're going walking with your cat, or, when they're out exploring, they're not, we don't think they're burning off a huge amount of energy. And the reality is that we can't just go, well, I'm going to go walking more and I'm not going to change what's in the food bowl, because that's never going to work. We need to change the food bowl. But what that's going to do is they're going to be using their muscles. And so they're going to be maintaining that muscle mass. And again, preferentially kind of shifting that fat and getting rid of that fat. So that's really, really important there. What we can also do is we can just feed our cats in a different way as well. So we can, rather than just putting it in the food bowl, we talked about the food bowl, actually, if it's a nice day, you guys are coming into spring and summer, just, chucking it out in the garden, and your cat has to go and kind of hunt for their food, if you like. Or if they're an indoor cat, you actually feed them in different places. You give them, leave them little packages in different places, pretend mice, if you like, in the laundry cupboard, and they have to go and kind of hunt for it. They have to go and look for their food. And, that provides them with some great mental stimulation as well. I mean, potentially that's something that we should be doing anyway for our cats, because if they're indoor cats, they're maybe not getting that stimulation, that enrichment that they would ideally have, and that that can provide it for them as well. And then we can play with our cats more. So if you've ever had your cat running around on the end of a fishing line with a feather on it or something, they can get pretty puffed pretty quickly. Lasers are great for that. Now, lasers, we need to be a little bit careful, because they can absolutely become fixated on looking for that red dot all the time. So these things in moderation, but that, again, that just provides that physical stimulation, that physical exercise. It helps, make sure that metabolism is shifted to one of burning fat and maintaining muscle. That can make a huge difference as well. And it's just great bonding with your cat as well. You're going to be a closer family unit as well, aren't you?
Yeah, totally. It's so nice, that experience, isn't it, of getting that playtime in.
I guess it's the same as with humans as well. When you're bored, you eat. When I'm bored, I go to the cupboard, I eat something. It's an event. And if your cat's bored and the only event in their life is dinner time, then that's a big deal. But I suppose if you're filling the rest of the time with other equally fun activities, it doesn't become such a central point in their life. So it's got to be a good thing.
Absolutely. And that, Kevin, is really important as well when it comes to actually maintaining that healthy weight, because a lot of people, and something that we haven't said is, although we've kind of said weigh out the food, never feed your cat what we call ad lib. So don't just have a bowl of biscuits down that fill up when it's getting a little bit empty and your cat always has access to it. Because absolutely, if they're bored, they're going to eat. It's an urban myth that cats will regulate their food intake to maintain a healthy weight. Unfortunately, that's what we always used to think. If you go back, that's what people would say, dogs get fat, cats, they're clever. But unfortunately they do. So, feed your cat as meals. No, you can leave the food down if you feed them their whole daily portion at in the morning, but just don't top it up in the evening. Once they've eaten it, it's gone. So just know exactly how much you're feeding your cat and be in control of that, rather than your cat being in control of how much they eat.
Yeah, that makes total sense. One question that we're often asked when we're talking about doing training, because obviously a lot of cat training involves food-based rewards, although people can use other types of rewards as well, is how to sort of, if we're using like a whole, we call them like a lickety or a churro, or like a whole cat salami, do we have to subtract that from what they're eating in their day, or how do we work it out?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Like, ideally, what there will be on the pack will be it will say how many calories are in that, and then like our better cat. So our, and this goes back to then quality of cat food and diet to feed and all that kind of thing. But our good quality cat diets and pet foods as a whole, they should have a calorie content on the pack. So you should be able to work out. Often it'll be per can if you're feeding a wet food. Or even then it might be per kilogram is often the amount that it is. But from that, you can work out how many calories is in a gram or 100 grams or whatever.
Yeah.
And then hopefully on your treat, it should say as well, this treat, this one thing contains X number of calories. And so
Brilliant.
There's no really easy way of doing it. It's just sitting down and working it out, I guess. If it doesn't contain that information on it, there should be a number of a helpline to call.
Okay.
If you call them, they should be able to answer that question, how many calories. If they can't, then it's probably not a food you should be feeding your cat. And unfortunately, there will be ones out there. Or if there's no way to get in touch with anyone, do the usual Googling as well. It may be there and you might find it quicker than going through the helpline. But if you can't find it, then that's actually probably a red flag that it's probably not the greatest food in the first.
I think just for me, actually, knowing that calories exist in cat world as well as human world, because I would have felt quite silly potentially calling up the pet food manufacturer and talking about my cat being on a diet, and calories feels like it's a very sort of human thing. So it's good to know that all that terminology translates over.
So what you'll see on the pack, Laylee, is that it'll say 800 kcal. So it'll be a small K and then CAL per kilogram. And that is a kcal is a calorie. So it's just slightly different terminology maybe than you might be used to seeing depending on where you are.
Brilliant. I don't know how much time you have, Alex, but I have one more question from our community, which is about...
No, I've got half an hour until I need to take the kids to school, so we're all good.
Okay. I don't want to be responsible for the children turning up late to school.
They're all good. They might not have any lunch. I need to make that, but that's all good.
So your poor children will be late and hungry, and send the angry letters to the school our way. And the last question, make it really snappy, is for people that have more than one cat, so multi-cat households, if your cats are of different weights or have different dietary needs, do you have any advice about how people manage that?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So there's a number of different ways that we can do that. And it is difficult. Like the more animals there are in the house, the harder it is. The way that we can get most success is to use microchip cat bowls.
Great.
So they scan your cat's microchip and they only open up for a cat with that particular microchip that you've programmed in. Now, they're not cheap. I think they're about $150, so 75 quid or something like that, maybe.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but they're not cheap, but that's the way that we can do it the easiest and I guess with most success. Yeah. Now, if you're going down that route and you've got lots of cats, especially if you've got a cat with, specific medical requirements, so they need to eat a particular diet because they've got kidney disease, for example. If you say you've got two cats, you actually only need to buy one microchip cat feeder.
Oh, wow.
And you use that for your cat that's healthy. So you put the normal food in there. And then you put the other food where your other cat can access it. The chances are they'll probably go for the one that they, the non-prescription one or the non-weight loss one.
I see, yeah.
And then your cat that needs the special diet can access that other one all the time.
Yeah.
So that's one way to do it. Or you get one for each of your cats, and the more cats you have, it's a reality for some people, but not for others. Now, otherwise, we spoke about not leaving food down all the time. Making sure that we're having specific meals, getting your cat used to that. That might take a month to get used to the fact that I need to eat in this 20-minute period or else I'm not going to eat until the next meal time. If they're used to grazing all the time, that's a bit of a mental shift for them. But so, taking that time over a month to have that transition, but really focusing on, I'm going to supervise my meal time. Or I'm going to feed, cat A in the laundry, cat B in the kitchen, cat C in the bedroom, whatever. Shutting those doors, giving them their 20 minutes, half an hour to eat their food, and then all the food bowls come up.
Wow.
So there's no chance of them getting in Now, for fat cats and thin cats, or say you've got a fat older cat and a kitten's come into the household, I've certainly seen people describe, you'd wedge the door open only a certain amount so the smaller cat can get in, the fat cat can't get through, or cut a hole in a cardboard box and feed the thin cat in the cardboard box through that tiny hole. Yeah. And it may be that works. There needs to be a pretty big size disparity there, because cats can contort themselves and squeeze, where there's a will, there's a way. But, that's potentially, that might be an option. But that mealtime is really the one that is accessible to everybody. Again, depending on how busy your life is and all that kind of thing, it's sometimes easier said than done. But yeah, those are a couple of tips there. But yeah, it's not easy. And, from that point of view, it's important that people don't beat themselves up about this whole condition. So don't beat yourselves up about the fact that your cat is overweight. We've all been there. I've been there. It happens very slowly. So it's not like your cat goes from being a completely healthy weight cat to being a big blob overnight. It happens over years, and we're seeing our cats every day. Cats, they don't show that they're struggling in various ways very easily, very clearly at all. And so it's very easy to happen. So don't beat yourself up about it. Don't think, I've done this to my cat, I'm such a bad pet parent. That's not the case at all. It's, it's just the reality, unfortunately. And then if you're trying and you're not getting that weight loss you want, it's hard, guys. Like, don't beat yourself up about it to say, and think, I'm failing, I'm doing a really bad job. Everyone else is succeeding. The reality is that everyone else is failing as well. And you're doing much better than the vast majority by even addressing this as a problem in the first place. Yeah. And then if you are struggling, then even if you are trying to go it alone, or you've been to see your vet nurse or your vet tech or your vet or whatever, then, just reach out, because we want our patients to be as healthy as they can, despite some internet conspiracy theories out there. We want to prevent all the diseases, because, that's what we're here for. And if we can help in any way, then, absolutely we will.
Helping your pet live the happy, healthy life they deserve.
So we really covered a lot of ground in that chat, and I've got another couple of resources that I know you're going to love. So the first of these is episode number 101 with Ingrid from Fundamentally Feline, where we chatted all about the use of food puzzle feeding for cats, and also the use of toys and how to actually get your cats to interact with the toys and to play with them as well. This is hugely important, because although I talk about feeding meals and controlling your cat's intake that way, use of food toys is going to be really important, because it's going to spread your cat's feeding out. It's actually going to allow them to feed as they would prefer to be fed, to be eating lots of small meals throughout the day, and it's going to hugely stimulate and improve their mental well-being and their happiness too. So check that out, episode number 101. And then the other episode to check out is the actual interview with Kevin and Laylee, all about their company SuperKit. So they produce the most amazing cat collars and cat harnesses to get your cat out and about. If you think that harnesses are not for your cat, then I'd really encourage you to think again and check out episode number 83, where we talk all about how to actually introduce harness training and harnesses to your cat so that you can get them outdoors. And we also talk about the importance of collars, some different things you need to think about when looking for a collar, how to introduce them to your cat, and also what to put on their tag. And if you also want to check out the collars and harnesses themselves, then you could head over to superkit.co, and I'll leave an affiliate link in the show notes, which also will give you a 10% discount too. As always, if you've got a friend or family member with a rather portly feline, then make sure you share this episode with them. And until next time, I'm Dr. Alex. This is the Call the Vet Show, because they're family.
That's it for this episode of the Call the Vet Show. Be sure to visit callthevet.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. We'll see you next time.